The forest conceals some strange mechanical animals known as skidders. Here is one of them. Hidden in the bush, it keeps a silent lookout. Upon the dry cracking sound of a sawn tree, the skidders charges forth, head lowered like a steel rhinoceros. Skidders do not bother with niceties. They blindly slash their way through to the trunk of the chopped tree that is their target. Gabon is a small Central African country with a total area of 267,667 kilometers square, half the size of France. The country's last census, conducted in 1993, counted a total of 1,014,976 residents, more than half of whom lived in Libreville, the political capital, and Port-Gentil, the country's economic center. 85% of the country's surface, or almost 22 million hectares, is covered in forests. Gabon is one of the few countries in the world with an excellent potential for future forest conservation. The country's forest and wildlife have traditionally been protected from overexploitation, thanks to the existence of large quantities of other natural resources such as oil, manganese, and uranium that have provided sufficient revenue to keep the national economy rolling. In Chibanga, a Pygmy village in southern Gabon's Ikobe district, people are experiencing firsthand the decline of their centuries-old way of life due to overexploitation of their forests. Dressed in the faded finery brought to them by traveling used clothing dealers, they appear to be relatively integrated into modern industrial society. But these peaceful people, whose whole world revolves around the forest, find themselves caught between the rock of modern consumer society and the hard place of lumber harvesters concerned only with the bottom line. Despite the jovial tone of this song written for the Malaysian foresters, the Pygmies managed to convey their worries about their future that is intertwined with that of the forest. Crisscrossing the forest over trails, rivers, and mountains, the Pygmies allow us a glimpse of the magnificent, almost intact world with which they live in harmony. They know every tree species. However, this forest is no longer theirs alone. The yellow beacons on some of the trunks mark the areas of the forest reserved for cutting, as well as the imminent arrival of chainsaws and skidders. Hunting and trafficking in wild game are also profitable activities. A forestry worker can double his salary by poaching, and the development of road networks has allowed for the easy shipment of animal parts to the big cities where demand is booming.
I think the formal ban on hunting is seen as too idealistic by most people and very difficult for them to swallow. It's to the point that if they caught red-handed, they still refuse to admit their guilt because they don't believe they can be prosecuted. They can't believe it because that's how they earn their living. That's how they put food on the table.
This interdependence between man and forest raises an obvious question: to conserve or to exploit the region's resources? The debate is far from new between the hardline defenders of nature preserves and those who defend the rights of the lumber companies. The start of a consensus is beginning to form.
When I arrived here, there were 5 or 6 logging permits in the reserve, and several logging companies operating within the reserve. We then got into a series of debates with the government and the lumber industry on the idea of exploiting the forest, because the main idea behind having a preserve is to protect. We had a few years of terse relations, especially with the foresters, but I think that now we've moved into a more positive phase.